What up, Raffleaders? Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to show you how to calculate Guyana's GDP and how much money we get from ExxonMobil from the oil and gas industry. So follow me closely. So first of all, let me compare Guyana's current GDP with the GDP of neighboring countries. Now the figures for Guyana's GDP exist on Google, say in a Google search from 2020. If you go to Google and you type GDP, Guyana's GDP, it will pull up a graph that looks something like this, where the GDP for 2020 is about $5.41 billion. And you can see that Suriname has about $3.8 billion GDP economy, and the next closest neighbors in terms of GDP is Belize, which has about $1.78 billion in production from their economy. Right now, Trinidad is at about 20 billion, 21.5 billion for 2021, and neighboring Trinidad, closest neighbor is Jamaica, which has about 13.8 billion, and Haiti about 13.4 billion. And for those of you who think Guyana should be like Dubai, I'm going to give you a comparison, right? First, comparing Guyana to, say, Singapore. Singapore's economy is about $340 billion, and in terms of GDP, the neighboring countries, Malaysia produces 336 billion, and Hong Kong 346 billion. So that's a neighborhood of Singapore. Singapore, Malaysia, and Hong Kong producing about 346 billion dollars. But the United Arab Emirates sits out there at 421 billion US dollars in terms of GDP. That's what their economy produces. So Guyana is a long way at 5.4 billion GDP, a long way away from UAE, United Arab Emirates, and Singapore, which is at 340 billion. But we're coming for them. So let me show you how to calculate GDP, and let me show you how to calculate the oil and gas, that is the amount of oil Guyana gets, the royalty and profit share from ExxonMobil. So currently, that is as of May 2022, ExxonMobil is producing about 340,000 barrels of oil per day. That means it takes about 3 days to produce 1 million barrels of oil, right? 340 by 3 is about 1,000, so it takes about 3 days to produce 1 million barrels of oil. And it takes 30 days to produce 10 million barrels of oil, right? So if 3 days you produce 1 million barrels, in 3 by 10, 30 days you will produce 10 million barrels. So 30 days is 1 month. So you can produce 10 million barrels a month, and there are 12 months in a year. So multiply that by 12, that gives you 120 million barrels of oil per year, right? So a little more actually if you go by the days, 365 days divided by 3, you basically get 22, so 122 million barrels a day. But let's round off at 120 million barrels a year. So ExxonMobil is going to produce 120 million barrels in the next 12 months. Guyana's contract awards it 12.25% of the profit share and royalty. Right? When you calculate it, I've done a calculation. You can go back to a video previously shown, that video where I showed it's 12.25% of the total revenue Guyana gets from ExxonMobil's production. But I also showed that there are 8 lifts in a complete cycle, and Guyana gets 1 out of every 8 lifts. So that means out of 120 million barrels of oil, Guyana will get 15 million, right? That is how you get 1/8 of the production. So that means for a year, that is from, say, May 2022 to May 2023, Guyana will collect and lift 15 million barrels of oil. Now, if the price of oil stays at $100 a barrel as it is right now, in fact, today it's about $110 a barrel, right? But if it stays above $100 a barrel, that means that Guyana will get $1 million for each, $100 million for each lift, and 15 lifts will give you $1.5 billion, right? So going into the Natural Resource Fund from oil for the next 12 months from ExxonMobil will be 15 million barrels of oil, which when sold above $100 a barrel works out to be 15 times 100, $1.5 billion going into the Natural Resource Fund, right? So that means that the Natural Resource Fund will actually exceed $2 billion by next year at this time, right? Remember in the previous prediction I made that Guyana's Natural Resource Fund will reach $1 billion by the first quarter of 2023. Well, now I'm revising that prediction because the price of oil has gone up, almost doubled since then, and the production has tripled. So Guyana will actually hit about $2 billion. The Natural Resource Funds will hit about $2 billion by May 2023. But let's get back to talking about GDP. All of the production of oil, that is, all of the oil produced by ExxonMobil, counts towards the GDP. So we have to calculate all of the 120 million barrels of oil. When you sell that 120 million barrels of oil, you get about $12 billion, right? So it's going to be a little more depending on the actual price at which it's sold above $100 a barrel, and the actual amount to produce could be 122 million barrels of oil. That put you at 12.2 billion, right? So let's round it off at $12 billion for the next 12 months. So that's the GDP from oil. And if the GDP from the rest of the economy, all of the other sectors of the economy combined, stays the same as it was in 2020 at about $5 billion, then Guyana's economy will be $17 billion by next year, this time, the next 12 months. In other words, the next 12, from May 2022 to May 2023, Guyana's economy will generate about 17 billion US dollars, right? Not quite 20 billion, but 17 billion US dollars, which now puts us in the vicinity of Trinidad and Jamaica and Haiti, which means that, remember we said in the beginning, Trinidad's economy in 2020 was 21.5 billion. Haiti's economy is 13.4 billion. Jamaica's economy, 13.8 billion. Now Guyana will sit right there between Trinidad and Jamaica at $17 billion in 2023, right? And I said, by 2025, Guyana's economy will not only grow by 50% per annum, but surpass Trinidad's economy at $21.5 billion. Now, even if Trinidad's economy grows, and it doesn't seem to be growing significantly in the last few years, right? Trinidad has a stagnant economy. So even if Trinidad economy grows to, say, 25 billion, if you add the Guyana's growth rate that's around 40 to 50% per annum, we get, by 2025, Guyana will have an economy of almost 30 billion US dollars, right? By 2025, Guyana will have a almost 30 billion US dollar economy. That is provided the price of oil stays above $100 per barrel. So that's how we do the calculations, guys. Now, a lot of people have been asking me questions about the Natural Resource Fund, about the value of the Guyana dollar, and about the GDP. right? So this is an attempt to answer some of those questions. What will happen? As I said yesterday, the GDP, GDP and the Natural Resource Fund form a floor, sort of a baseline of petrodollars to support the Guyana dollar. What will happen to the Guyana dollar when Guyana's economy reaches $30 billion in the next 2 to 3 years? My guess is that the dollar will strengthen. I'm predicting that the dollar will now trade under 200 to 1 Guyana dollars for a US dollar by 2025, right? So let's make that prediction and see what happens. But that's what's happening, guys. Guyana now has a 17 billion US dollar economy for the next 12 months. We'll probably hit about $30 billion by 2025, given the growth rate of 40 to 50% per annum, and we'll surpass Trinidad. We're already past Jamaica. In other words, for the next 12 months, Guyana's economy will generate more than Jamaica's economy generated. It will generate more than Haiti's economy generated. In other words, they are still sitting at about 13.8 and 13.4 billion. Guyana is going to now sit at about $17 billion. And by 2025, we will surpass Trinidad with an economy, Guyana's economy, generating about 30 billion US dollars in production. Most of that, of course, is going to be oil and gas. So the final question is, what is the percentage of the economy that is going to be generated by oil, covered by oil and gas? Well, 12 of that 17 billion for the next 12 months is coming from oil and gas, which means that the oil and gas sector of the economy is more than double the rest of the economy already, right? 12 compared to 5 billion. Oil and gas generating about 12 billion, the rest of the economy generating about 5 billion, right? These are estimates, these are numbers that are not precise based on rounding errors that I've already discussed, right? But that is where we are, guys. Guyana is now at a $17 billion economy, and in the next 2 to 3 years, we will be sitting at close to $30 billion. Still far away from Singapore, which has a $340 billion economy, and even much further away from the UAE, which sits at $421 billion economy. But it's early days, and we'll see what happens in the next 2 decades. If you want to see more content like this, click like and subscribe. In the comments below, tell me what you think about this calculation and about the current status of Guyana in the Caribbean in terms of the value, the magnitude of the economy, now sitting above Jamaica and Haiti and just under Trinidad, right? And share this video with friends and family. Let people know what's happening here in Georgetown, Guyana. Later!